statements regarding belief and the dangerousness of imposing someone's belief. So you go on to mention, again, we've got the issue with cultures, so just kind of cap that off, of knowing what culture existed back then exactly. And so I'd be curious as to your views and how you're deriving this and what justification you use for deriving what culture was in these cultures that were from the start of time. Because, and not simply that, but what is it about these particular strands that you're describing that had them propelling society forward in a way that was more advantageous to the other ones around it, so that its propagation was not simply an outgrowth of anomalies that statistically would reoccur, but was actually an element in which a tribe became more and more superior because it adhered to this mimetic construct, this mimetic paradigm of allowing such fluidity in terms of what people regard as their own gender, and then how that led to dominance of either its own mimetic set of thought, or sorry if I'm kind of mixing words here, I didn't write this out, perchance I should have, but you talk about how because of our history, our culture derived from Christianity, be it Catholic or Protestant, or many derivatives and denominations, I actually think, I mean, we certainly do have a lot, especially here in the United States, of that as a part of our cultural lineage, but there's a great deal that goes back even to Babylon for the whole of Western civilization that I think would be as key, perchance more or less, but anyway. You talk about how we know that there are many religions and none are, quote, more right than others. It would be interesting how you would know that, because saying that you know that one is would imply that you have some knowledge that you're privy to that is superior because it's right. And anyway, that gets into the whole idea of dogmatism and the dogma of being non-dogmatic, I guess it were. You say now on the matter of same-sex. In history, your physical and sexual characteristics have never been the determining factor of the gender role you promote or identify and act. I mean, simply because there's been instances in which somebody has had a particular gender and has manifested something considered, for males, perchance they've had traits that have been considered more feminine, or vice versa with females. That doesn't mean that it's never been a determining factor, or that it generally isn't a determining factor. And this kind of to say that this is just a modern and refined concept, again, we have to rely on what your view you're pulling from history and prehistory, and it would be appreciated if you could put forward both where you're deriving this from and how you justify this logically, because it's not as clear-cut as you're laying it out. So you move from this to saying that this is a belief and not something to use as a determining factor when judging someone else's freedoms. Well, you see, I'm approaching this issue a little bit differently. I'm going on in terms of fitness. Certainly, I do have a belief, and my views do align with my belief. My intellectual views do align with my belief, and however you want to believe those align themselves is quite frankly irrelevant to myself, and I think irrelevant to the issue if we do want to discuss it, because the arguments I believe are independent. I believe the arguments I make are independent of my beliefs, because I'm arguing from a point of this being more fit, and the idea that something is more fit means it's more attuned to present conditions. It's more able to survive in either present conditions or in prevailing conditions over a long period of time. If not, fitness can be described in a lot of ways, but essentially it's the setup in which you're the most adaptable to change relative to your environment, in changing in ways that make it so that you can either at least maintain a certain threshold on the bottom or exceed that threshold. So this whole idea of imposing your belief upon someone else, and that's oppression, well, that view, I mean, you couldn't really support any kind of government or structure at all with that kind of view, because anytime there is, in fact, I mean, you put forward the idea of community. The very idea of community is an idea of people conforming, whether it's oppressing their own selves or oppressing others, or a combination of the two. And I submit that for all of human history, it has been some degree a combination of the two. You can't pass on a culture to a child and have it really be a culture if you are not actively shaping their capacity to perceive, and thereby oppressing or impressing your paradigms to some degree on them. I mean, it's just an innate characteristic of whenever you have human communication, somebody, for that communication to work, has to be willing to relinquish something to someone else, and or somebody has to be willing to take their views and their rules and impress them upon others. And so any way you look at it, you can call this oppression, but the fact is that somebody has to see their ideas as being as good or better than other people's, and other people have to end up conceding and say that their idea is as good as mine or better than mine. Otherwise, even human communication is not possible on any meaningful or real level. So imposing beliefs upon someone else, I think it's the wrong. I mean, you can force something on someone, but if there's no attempt to press something on somebody, then there's never any real communication. Because if you're not ever trying to interact, if you're not ever trying to get ideas to collide, then you're not really communicating, because the perspectives aren't being shared. Perspectives can't ever align if they don't ever, meet at some point. Anyway, so I look forward to hearing what you say if you're not completely disillusioned with myself, and if you have the desire to respond on this. So anyway, thanks for commenting, and I look forward to whatever response you might give. So take care.